It was just another day at the airport, or so it seemed. A woman simple in appearance, but clearly out of place in the bustling terminal, was quietly detained by security. No one knew her name, and no one could figure out why she had been singled out. As the minutes turned into hours, whispers started circulating. Was she a criminal? Was there something hidden in her luggage? The tension in the air was palpable. She sat alone, her hands trembling as she tried to keep her composure, unsure of what was happening or why. The airport staff seemed to be on edge, speaking in hushed tones, as though they were trying to avoid drawing attention. But then, just as the situation seemed to take an even stranger turn, a sleek private jet appeared on the runway. The crowd gasped in disbelief as a luxury car pulled up beside it, and out stepped a man, the kind of man who had the power to turn heads just by walking into a room. But who was he? And why had he come for her? The woman, still in a state of confusion, watched as he approached with an air of quiet authority. His presence seemed to change everything. Security scrambled to make way for him, and suddenly, the detained woman's fate seemed to shift. But why had he arrived now? What was his connection to her? Just as the mystery deepened, the jet's engines roared to life, and the crowd began murmuring. The answers were just out of reach, but they were coming, and the questions only multiplied. As the private jet's engines hummed in the background, the woman remained seated, her eyes fixed on the man now standing in front of her. His suit was sharp, the kind of suit that suggested wealth beyond measure, but it wasn't just his clothes that set him apart. There was an air of power around him, a presence that made even the seasoned airport staff hesitate. She tried to keep her composure, but her mind was racing. Who was this man, and why was he here for her? The woman, whose name was Emily, had always lived a life far from luxury. She was from a small town, raised by her grandmother after her parents had passed away when she was young. Life had never been easy, but Emily had learned to make do with what she had. She worked as a teacher, helping children discover the magic of books and stories. She was happy with a simple life, never dreaming that her world would shift so dramatically. But everything changed the moment she met him. His name was Marcus Westbrook, a billionaire known for his quiet demeanor and his immense fortune. They'd met by chance at a charity event, and in a twist of fate, they had hit it off. What began as a casual friendship quickly turned into something deeper, and before she knew it, they were married. To the outside world, it seemed like a fairy tale, but Emily had always kept one foot firmly grounded in reality. What Marcus saw in her, though, remained a mystery. He rarely spoke about his past or his reasons for falling in love with her, and Emily had learned not to question it. But now, in the midst of her detention, the truth seemed just out of reach. Why had he arrived now, and why was it so important for him to bring her into his world of wealth and intrigue? She had no answers, only a growing sense of dread that something was about to shatter the life she had known. Emily could feel the weight of the silence press against her chest as Marcus approached, his footsteps deliberate and steady. His expression was unreadable, his eyes focused solely on her. It was as if the entire airport had faded into the background, leaving just the two of them in this strange moment. She couldn't decide whether to feel relieved or terrified. After all, she had never imagined that a day at the airport would turn into a nightmare. She had married Marcus not for his wealth or his power, but for the kindness he had shown her when the world around her had been dark. But over time, she had begun to notice the cracks in the fairy tale. There were things about Marcus that he never talked about, things that made her wonder if she truly knew him at all, like the secrecy surrounding his business empire or his odd absences at times when she needed him most. And then there were the people who spoke in hushed tones when he wasn't around, casting sideways glances as though they knew something she didn't. The detainment at the airport was the final straw. Something wasn't right. She had never seen so much tension in the eyes of the officers, nor heard whispers so urgent. It felt as though she were caught in the middle of a story much bigger than herself, one she was only beginning to understand. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "Emily, it's time." We need to leave now." His words hit her like a punch. She looked around the room, at the security agents still watching her, the few curious travelers who had begun to gather. What was going on? And why was this all happening so suddenly? Her gut told her that Marcus wasn't just here to take her home. There was something more, something dangerous, waiting just around the corner. She could feel the pressure building, but she couldn't figure out where the pressure was coming from. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay calm. Marcus' eyes shifted, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of something she couldn't quite place, fear, perhaps, or guilt. But before he could answer, the airport security officers stepped forward, signaling for them to move. The moment was slipping away, and whatever answers Emily sought seemed just out of reach. The air around Emily grew thick with uncertainty as Marcus led her toward the private jet, his grip on her arm firm, but not unkind. She could feel the eyes of the airport staff following them, their whispers filling the space between her thoughts. The private jet loomed ahead, sleek and cold, like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Every step she took felt heavier, as if the ground itself was trying to hold her back. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled into something far bigger than she could comprehend. "Marcus, what is this? What's happening?" she asked again, her voice low but desperate. He didn't respond at first, his eyes fixed on the jet as if it were the only thing that mattered. The sense of urgency around them was suffocating, and Emily's heart raced. She had never seen him like this, so distant, so focused, as if he were running from something. Before Marcus could answer, one of the airport security officers stepped forward, blocking their path. "Sir, we have to ask you to remain here for further questioning. There's been a mix-up regarding your wife's travel documents," the officer said, his voice calm but firm. Marcus' jaw tightened, and Emily felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. A mix-up. She had never heard of any issues with her paperwork. She looked at Marcus, searching his face for any sign of what was really going on. He didn't meet her gaze. Instead, his eyes flickered to the jet and then back to the officer. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, the tension so thick it was almost unbearable. And then, without warning, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something, a small, unmarked envelope. "Give her a moment," he said quietly. "I need to take care of this." The officer hesitated but nodded, stepping back slightly. Emily's stomach turned. There was something hidden in that envelope, something that was about to change everything. Marcus moved quickly, slipping the envelope into the hands of a man who had just emerged from the shadows of the terminal. Emily barely caught the exchange before the man disappeared as swiftly as he had come. Her heart skipped a beat. What was going on? Why had Marcus acted so swiftly? It wasn't just a routine issue with her travel documents, she could feel it now. Something far more dangerous was unfolding. The officer, still watching them carefully, seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere. "Sir, if you just come with us," he began, but Marcus cut him off sharply. "Not now," Marcus said, his tone cold and final. There was a dangerous edge to his voice that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. He turned to her, his eyes briefly meeting hers. But there was no warmth there, no reassurance. Only something darker, something far more unsettling. "Emily, I need you to trust me," he said, his voice low. "It's all going to be over soon. Just come with me, and I'll explain everything." But Emily wasn't listening. She was already scanning the area, her instincts kicking in. There was something off. The officers, who had been a mere inconvenience just moments ago, were now closing in on them with a quiet determination. Emily's pulse quickened as she realized the truth. They weren't just here to detain her. They were here for Marcus too. Before she could say anything, the sound of distant sirens reached her ears, growing louder by the second. Panic surged through her, and she looked around in desperation. The jet was no longer an escape. It felt more like a trap. As Marcus began to lead her toward it, the ground beneath them seemed to shift, the weight of their decisions bearing down on her with every step. She could feel the walls closing in, and with each passing second, Emily knew everything was about to change, but the question was, for better or for worse? Marcus moved swiftly toward the jet, but Emily could feel her world shifting beneath her. The sound of the sirens was growing louder, and her mind was racing. She wanted to trust Marcus, she really did, but something about the entire situation felt wrong. The officers weren't just security personnel anymore. They were involved in something much bigger, and so was Marcus. She had to know the truth. "Marcus, stop," she called out, her voice trembling. He paused for just a moment, his back stiff, as if he were bracing for something. When he turned to face her, his eyes were cold, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of anger in them. "You don't understand," he said through clenched teeth. "This is the only way." Emily shook her head, feeling her pulse race. "The only way for what? For you to escape." Her words cut through the tension between them like a blade. Before Marcus could respond, the sound of more sirens blared through the air, and a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. The door flew open, and a familiar figure stepped out. It was the man who had taken the envelope earlier, the one Marcus had exchanged with so hastily. But then the unexpected happened. The man didn't approach them. Instead, he pulled out a gun, pointing it straight at Marcus. Emily froze. The officers stepped back, watching in stunned silence. Marcus stood motionless, as if he knew this moment would come. "Don't move," the man said, his voice calm but full of authority. Emily's stomach dropped. And then, in an instant, everything clicked. The papers, the urgency, the jet. It wasn't just a matter of a simple misunderstanding. Marcus wasn't just a billionaire. He was involved in something far darker, something criminal. The man wasn't a friend or a business associate. He was here to take Marcus into custody. Marcus turned to Emily, his face drained of color. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. But before he could say another word, the man fired a warning shot, and Marcus was grabbed by two of the officers. As Marcus was pulled away, Emily watched in shock, her heart racing with the realization that everything she had believed about her husband, the man she had married, the man she had trusted, had been a lie. And as the sound of the jet's engines rolled to life, Emily knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The scene around Emily was chaos, but in the midst of it, she felt strangely still. Marcus was being escorted toward the black SUV, his face pale and his hands cuffed. He didn't look at her again, not even once. The pain in his eyes, the guilt, the sorrow, was almost too much to bear. Emily had spent so much time trying to understand him, trying to believe in the fairy tale they had created. But now the truth was undeniable. He wasn't the man she had thought he was. As the SUV doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped away, the airport grew eerily quiet. The officers who had been surrounding them seemed to exhale collectively, their tension easing just a little. Emily stood frozen, the weight of the moment crashing down on her. She had to process everything, but it didn't make sense. Marcus had been a part of something far bigger than her, something dangerous. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that he had tried to protect her, even if in the wrong way. One of the officers approached her, his face softer now. "Ma'am, we're sorry about all of this. We didn't want you to get involved." Emily nodded, not sure what to say. She had no words. Her life had just been ripped apart in ways she couldn't explain. As she turned to leave, the jet still idling on the tarmac, Emily glanced back at the runway. A few weeks ago, she would have been excited to board that jet, to fly away with Marcus to some distant, glamorous destination. Now, all she had was a suitcase and a heart full of confusion. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but somehow it was the life she had been thrust into. And as she walked away from the airport, Emily knew that the path ahead would be anything but easy. But for the first time in a long time, she felt free.